What's up, everybody? Welcome back to part 5 of my review of Kathleen Zellner's newest motion on behalf of Steven Avery. This part is going to be about the reasonable doubt as to Mr. Avery's guilt. Now, the other 4 videos are uploaded just before this one, and the entire 149-page document, Kathleen Zellner's full motion, is linked in the description below if you want to go have a view for yourself. Now, as to reasonable doubt as to Mr. Avery's guilt, if Bobby Dassey is established as a viable third-party Denny suspect, the forensic evidence in this case is completely undermined. Newly discovered evidence that Bobby was in possession of Teresa Halbach's vehicle means that he had opportunity and access to plant evidence in the vehicle and from the vehicle, because Bobby has been directly linked to the murder of Teresa Halbach. It is reasonable inference that he planted the bones from Mr. Avery's burn pit. This new evidence creates reasonable probability that had the jury heard the new evidence, it would have had reasonable doubt as to the defendant's guilt. Therefore, Mr. Avery should be granted a new trial. Now, if you're just catching up to this and this is the first video you're watching, go back and watch the other 4. Kathleen Zellner has gone all in on accusing Bobby Dassey of the murder of Teresa Halbach and has a ton of evidence to support her statements. Now she goes over the Brady violation regarding the Sawinski evidence. The Sawinski evidence is not only newly discovered evidence, but it also meets a criteria for a Brady violation. After Mr. Sawinski contacted Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel and provided the newly discovered evidence, Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel, through its investigator, submitted its second public records request pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act for audio recordings of incoming and outgoing calls and or radio dispatches between November 3rd, 2005 and November 9th, 2005 that relate to the Teresa Halbach case. The FOA produced audio recordings did not contain the Sawinski call on November 6th at 10:28 p.m., nor did they contain any dates or times of the calls produced. In May of 2022, Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel received the previously suppressed Thomas Sawinski call to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, which contained a partial recording of the suppressed call to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office on November 6, 2005. So, Thomas Sawinski did indeed call the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office, and they, or somebody there, suppressed this call and did not turn it over to counsel. For the first time, current post-conviction counsel received the exact dates. So not only do they have proof that he called, they now have proof of the exact dates and times of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office incoming calls. This is just absolutely bonkers that this is the second time that the department withheld calls regarding Steven Avery. As part of its further investigation, Mr. Avery's investigator interviewed Mr. Sawinski's ex-girlfriend, whom he was dating at the time of the November 5th, 2005 incident. Mr. Sawinski's ex-girlfriend corroborated Mr. Sawinski's account of what he had witnessed and what he had relayed to law enforcement. The ex-girlfriend recognized and identified Mr. Sawinski's voice on the recording played to her by the investigator. So not only do they have proof of the times and calls, they have somebody backing up the recorded voice of Thomas Sawinski. So there's absolutely zero doubt that this happened. Played to her by the investigator of a phone call made to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office on November 6, 2005 at 10:28 p.m. Mr. Avery's investigator also interviewed Mr. Sawinski again and played the same audio recording of the phone call that was made to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office on November 6, 2005 at 10:28 p.m. Mr. Sawinski identified his own voice, of course, in the audio recording of the phone call from November 6, 2005. The recording of Mr. Sawinski's call was newly discovered to the state by Mr. Avery's trial defense counsel prior or to during the trial. Pre-trial defense counsel made two specific requests pursuant for all exculpatory evidence information within the possession, knowledge, or control of the state, which would tend to negate the guilt of the defendant, or which would tend to affect the weight or credibility of the evidence used against the defendant, including any inconsistent statements. A second request was made by trial defense counsel for Brady material immediately before trial on January 18th, 2007. Of course, that is the original trial, the only trial Steven Avery has had so far. His attorneys at that time would have been Jerry Buting and Dean Strang, including an attached exhibit of trial defense counsel's July 24, 2006 letter to prosecutor Ken Kratz requesting all audio tapes. Is anyone at all surprised that Ken Kratz allegedly withheld information regarding this case? It's absolutely crazy that literally he was in prison for 18 years the first time for a crime he did not commit. He was arrested in 2005. It is now for this crime. It is now 2022. With all of this new evidence, there is absolutely reasonable doubt that Steven Avery did not commit this crime. They have all kinds of proof and new evidence backing that claim up. And not only is he in jail for almost 18 years again, a phone call was made just like the 1994 and 1995 call that could have set him free 8 years earlier when he was in prison the first time. It appears it has happened again. Just absolutely crazy. You could not write this. If you wrote this as a movie, you'd be like, nah, that's not believable. Just absolutely bonkers. Now, how this is a Brady violation. The state never disclosed the Thomas Sawinski evidence or the Sawinski call to Mr. Avery's current or past counsel. They had this information the entire time. They didn't give it to his original trial attorneys, and they did not give it to his current attorney either. The defense never received a law enforcement report of the Thomas Sawinski evidence provided to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office in November 2005. The Sawinski evidence is corroborated by the partial recording of his attempt to report the evidence of the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office prior to his being transferred. The Sawinski evidence is corroborated by the partial recording of his attempt to report the evidence to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office prior to his call being transferred. There is no recording or law enforcement report of the remainder of Thomas Sawinski's call that Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel, though reasonable diligence, has been able to locate it through a public records request. Now, Jerry Buting on Twitter has talked about this, and I'm going to do a separate video of this as well. He is obviously not a happy camper with this new information coming out. There is no duty for the defense to seek out information that has not been disclosed. However, Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel has made diligent efforts to obtain any and all information regarding the Thomas Sawinski evidence, including requesting all incoming calls to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office from the relevant time period. The following timeline illustrates the diligence demonstrated by Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel in investigating and corroborating the evidence that Thomas Sawinski provided to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office on November 6, 2005. December 26, 2020 at 10:42 p.m., Mr. Sawinski emailed Steven Avery's lawyers a summary of what he had observed on November 5, 2005. The subject of the email was, "We need to talk." Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel contacted Mr. Avery's trial defense counsel, Mr. Jerry Buting, who confirmed that Mr. Avery's trial counsel had not received any emails from Thomas Sawinski. Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel reviewed all discovered FOIA requests made by prior counsel and current post-conviction counsel to Manitowoc's Sheriff's Office. Any information relating to the Sawinski evidence was encompassed within those requests and should have been produced but was not. April 10th, 2021, post-conviction counsel investigator met with Mr. Sawinski in person in Manitowoc for an interview and reviewed his affidavit with him. The affidavit described the evidence Mr. Sawinski reported to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office about what he observed on the Avery property while delivering newspapers on November 5, 2005, as well as the actions he took afterwards, including a map indicating where he observed the two males pushing the RAV4. After reviewing the affidavit and making any necessary changes, Mr. Sawinski executed the affidavit before a Wisconsin notary. April 12, 2021, Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel filed defendant appellate's motion to stay appeal and remand the cause to supplement his post-conviction motion with a new witness affidavit establishing a Brady violation with a new third-party Denny suspect. August 28, 2021. Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel listened to all audio recordings in its possession from discovery, as well as its own investigation, and determined there was no recording matching the description Mr. Sawinski provided to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office. March 15, 2022, Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel, through its investigators, submitted the following three new public requests to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office. The first request sought copies of any 911 recordings. It's a good thing this stuff is recorded, even though they tried to destroy it or hide it, and it came out. Of any 911 recordings in your possession of incoming telephone calls to the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Joint Dispatch Center between November 3rd, 2005 at 12:01 a.m. through November 9th, 2005 at 11:59 p.m. If they did this to him, do you think that they consistently did it to other people as well, allegedly? Man. The second request sought copies of incoming and outgoing telephone calls, logs of the recorded Manitowoc County Sheriff's Joint Dispatch calls between the dates of November 3rd, 2005 at 12:01 a.m. through November 9th, 2005 at 11:59 p.m. that relate to Teresa Hallbach's investigation. Information should include date, time, and telephone numbers involved in the calls. The third request sought copies of audio recordings of incoming and outgoing calls or radio dispatches between the dates of November 3rd, 2005, 12:01 p.m. through November 9th, 2005 at 11:59 p.m. that relate to the Teresa Hallbach investigation. May 3rd, 2022, in response to Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel. March 15th, 2022, public records request. Through its investigator for the first time, recordings were provided to Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel, who thoroughly reviewed and listened to all the audio recordings and located one of interest, which took place on November 6, 2005 at 10:28 p.m. For the first time, the time and date of the calls were revealed on the track file. This was May 3rd, 2022, that they finally got proof of the time and date of this call. On August 6, 2022, current post-conviction counsel's investigator met with Mr. Sawinski's former girlfriend on August 6, 2022, and played for her the audio recording from the November 6, 2005, 10:28. She identified the voice on the call as Mr. Sawinski, and her recollection of being with Thomas Sawinski when he placed the call. So there's proof. There was somebody there with him when he made the call. From the November 6th call to the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office. August 6, 2022, once again, current post-conviction counsel investigator met with Mr. Sawinski, played for him the audio recording of his November 6, 2005 call at 10:28 p.m. Mr. Sawinski identified his own voice on the call as himself. Mr. Avery's current post-conviction counsel affirming with an affidavit regarding his own voice identification. Whew. So that's where I'm going to leave this one. This also continues with the Thomas Sawinski evidence. It's going to continue in the next video, but this video got a little bit long because there's a ton of information regarding the Thomas Sawinski evidence. I'm going to break it here, and part 6 will be up right after this video. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think so far of the newly discovered Thomas Sawinski evidence. Leave some comments below. I hope you're having a good day, and I'll see you again real soon.